And I'm the current department chair of the Department of Educational Leadership Studies here at the University of Kentucky in our College of Education. Um, we, of course, at the College of Education care a lot about the different policy trends as well as the stuff going on in the ground across the state. And so we get to work with folks not only as students in our programs, but also in professional development opportunities and policy discussions. Shannon Sampson's here from our evaluation center. So in many, many different ways that we in the College of Education connect with educators across Kentucky. But here today, we want to sort of center some of the work that has been going on in partnership with our Center for Next Generation Leadership, which I'll introduce more in just a second. Today, though, we are holding this McCarthy Forum on Leadership, Law, and Policy as part of what we hope will be a series going forward of conversations that we in educational leadership studies hope to have for Kentucky about things around leadership, law, and policy that matter to our education system in Kentucky. Those are chosen, leadership, law, and policy are chosen for a reason. That is the space that we are good at in our Department of Educational Leadership Studies. And it is a space that doesn't get enough attention around the state. And so we hope to use this platform to convene these kinds of meetings so that we can bring some attention, open up some conversations that are sort of ripe in the state. Today's conversation is this shift that is underway. So if you're many of you in the room are friends, if you've been paying attention, there is a bit of a shift underway in Kentucky education. All along, as Karen will talk about in some of the background, and many in the room can speak to, David Cook, how I saw came into the room, Kentucky's sort of been on a long journey towards making shifts to our education system. But all along, there's this underlying question of what to do with the assessment and accountability system. That has been like this underlying thread the whole way as really Kentucky's been trying to work on change for over a decade. And so now, though, we're starting to see the shape of a local accountability system that might run in partnership with a state accountability system. And that today is what we want to bring to you. We want to talk about the leadership of that at the local level, because if it's going to be local, then it really has to be developed and led locally. And so we are having a couple of superintendents that are actively engaged in that work. Other superintendents are in the room that are currently working on that. So we have lots of folks that can speak to how this is taking shape. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We'll do some welcome and introductions, and then we'll move into some background. Both the United We Learn effort, this longer journey we've been on towards next generation schools in Kentucky, our current effort placed that a little bit in the national context. After each of these bullet points, we'll open up to a little bit of conversation, just so you know, to be ready with your questions. Also, over in the chat, we want questions. I really would particularly love questions in the form of likes, wonders, and wishes. You know, that's our educator happy place. We like those likes, wonders, and wishes. So as you frame your comments over into the chat, that would be great to frame as likes, wonders, and wishes. And we can bring those out into the space so that we can sort of open that conversation. After that, we'll share a little bit about the current shape of the accountability model that's taking shape at the State Department. But really, the thing we want to feature today is these two examples from Greenup County and from Allen County on how local accountability is taking shape. So then we'll spend most of the time on those examples. Introductions. So, of course, you know me at this point. I'm Justin, my colleague here, both as a clinical faculty member and as the executive director of our Center for Next Generation Leadership, is Karen Perry. Karen is going to help do some of that context setting and background work. The Center for Next Generation Leadership serves as intermediary on this work in Kentucky. And so we've been running alongside it for quite some time. And then our two examples. So Traysea Moresea, who is the superintendent of Greenup County Schools and has been working on this problem for several years, also has invited some of the folks in her district. So there's more folks from Greenup County in the room who can sort of speak to that particular journey. And then Travis Hamby, the superintendent of Allen County Schools. Travis has been working on this change. He can tell you, but like we've been working on this Travis has been on this for at least 15 years, I would say. Was featured in a documentary years ago in the prior work in Trigg County. So this is a long-term journey that is really sort of now taking shape in Allen County. And then the last person I want to introduce and ask to say hello is Martha McCarthy, who is our alumni here at UK. Also current donor, providing a little bit of funding to us as a department to help host these conversations. But beyond that is a long-term scholar and voice in the world of education leadership and law. She was a professor at Indiana University for many years, including my dissertation chair, and then moved on to Loyola Marymount University, from which she has recently retired. If you have read anything in school law, there's a fairly good chance Martha was behind it. So Martha, that's a bit of an introduction. I'm going to stop share and just let you say hello for just a second so folks know who you are relative to this effort.
Thanks so much, Justin. And I have to say, you are a very favorite among the 1,000+ graduate students I've taught. So I'm truly delighted to be here to add my heartfelt welcome. UK's College of Education means a great deal to me, and I'm really honored to help sponsor this exciting event. And I'm looking forward to learning a lot. So this is great.
Okay, lovely. And thank you for whoever hit the record button. Awesome. We did get several requests to record today, just for everyone's awareness that we're going to record and share this out. Several different folks, including some policy folks, asked that we record and share today's effort. Okay, so let's turn it over and start to dive into some history. I really do want to encourage everyone to say hello, even over in the chat, if you're willing to right now. I'd love to have just who you are and the work that you do and your relationship to this effort. It would help Travis and Tracy and Karen and myself like have a sense of who is in the room. So, we only have this 90 minutes together, so it's not like we can go around and do all these introductions, but I'd love to just have in the chat real fast who you are, where you've been joining from. And then once you get used to writing in the chat, don't stop. Likes, wish, wonders, questions, fire all those into the chat. We'll try to bring as much of that into the conversation as we can. Okay, Karen, I'll turn to you, but now I will just say for all of you, Karen has jumped in officially on vacation this week, running a vacation Bible school, not running, helping at a vacation Bible school class. So he did a huge favor to me by jumping into this effort. And also, we had invited Sarah Snipes from KDE. She was called last minute to CCSSO, who wants her to talk about this at the national level. So this very thing is being talked about at the national level right now. And so she had to jump out for that conversation that's going on at CCSSO. So Karen is going to help set some of that context and background, and we're going to help her as that unfolds.
So thanks, Justin. Happy to be here with you all today. As Justin said, really a little bit subbing in for Sarah Snipes, but I also see David Cook in the room and lots of other people who have been here, part of the Kentucky United We Learn work from the beginning. So even though Next Gen has been a partner of this work since the very beginning, and I've been there since the very beginning, I'd really invite folks who have lived with it to jump on in, and anything that I forget or add your own experience or perspective, love to have it, and love to have it be as much of a conversation as possible. But happy to be here with some old friends today, and I see some new friends as well. I hope to give a little bit of background to the Kentucky United We Learn effort and what has sort of spurred this conversation about local accountability, and then turn it over to the real experts who are the folks who are figuring out what local accountability really means in their communities. So I also am going to lovingly take over your screens here. Let's see. Okay. So I'll start here, which is at Next Gen and in the Department of Ed Leadership Studies. We believe that America's next step in education does start here in Kentucky. Kentucky has long had a history of innovation, and lots of folks on this call and others who couldn't join us today are part of the long history of innovation in Kentucky. And this is Kentucky's really kind of latest chapter in innovation. And I personally am really excited about it. And I know lots of other folks are excited about it as well. So we find ourselves amidst a movement here. And I specifically use that word movement because movements are grassroots things. This is not a dictate from the Kentucky Department of Education or the federal government or anyone external. One of the things that has been an absolute joy about this work is that this conversation is happening in 171 school districts across the Commonwealth. And it is absolute, just really an honor to be part of this and to watch this conversation and to learn alongside all the folks who are having this conversation right now in Kentucky. So all movements, though, even it's hard to pinpoint the exact moment of the movement starting, I'd like to share at least a little bit of history of Kentucky United We Learn, and just, kind of talk about at least some of the biggest moments of this work. So we use a lot of language around the Kentucky United We Learn movement around having a moonshot, and I'll share that moonshot with you in just a few minutes. So this language of flight path, taking us sort of back to look back for where this really began. Really, you could go back to COVID, prompting a real conversation around what does school need to look like that is something different. I sort of all agreed that we didn't want to just go back to normal after COVID. And so the conversation really began in 2021. That particular conversation began in 2021 with a commissioner's listening tour to say, what is it that Kentuckians want learning to look like for Kentucky kids? And so there was a listening tour. Lots of folks from KDE helped frame that up. It was facilitated by students, and there were, 20 stops or something across the Commonwealth. Many folks came. There were virtual sessions because post-COVID, of course, there was several Spanish sessions. And so began to form out of that the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education, which is KCAE. KCAE's main job was to take all that feedback from what Kentuckians said they wanted and begin to frame up a discussion that would form the foundation for the Kentucky United We Learn effort. One of the things that Kentuckians said was that they wanted learning to be more authentic and honor students as whole people, and that the assessment and accountability system was one of the things that was really a hindrance to the kind of learning that we wanted to see happen for Kentucky kids. And that part of the solution was going to come from local districts, that we should really seed innovation at the local level to help really find the path forward for what that might look like. One of the things that I learned from Jean Wilhoit long ago is that the federal government is probably not going to provide the primary solution to what the path forward is here. The better solution is going to bubble up from schools, from districts, and I think that is smart. It should come from the people who are closest to the experience. And so L3 stands for Local Labs of Learning, which is local districts really trying to answer the question, what can a local system of accountability look like that really advances the kind of learning that we want to see for Kentucky kids? So that was 2021, and then it turned into 2022-23. Kentucky United We Learn Council began to form with a focus on accountability. And then in 2024, some prototypes of a framework began to emerge that would really put some specificity to what does it look like to move toward our moonshot. And then 2025 has been a lot of town halls and model frameworks from the local districts, as well as from the state. And then the plan is for 2026 to move to the General Assembly. But let's dig into it a little bit and look at what the big ideas are. So the three big ideas coming out of Kentucky United We Learn really are these. how do we advance vibrant learning? And vibrant learning, the tagline for vibrant learning is learning that matters to students. So how do we really advance the kind of learning that matters to kids? And how do we do that? By accelerating innovation in assessment and accountability. And how do we do that in collaboration with local communities? So not imposed sort of downward on local districts, but how do we do that? How do we co-create those decisions together with local communities? And so those are the three big ideas of Kentucky United We Learn. There were standing committees. There's lots of learning. The Kentucky United We Learn Coalition started out as about 65 Kentuckians from a broad range of stakeholder roles, and really started digging into how do we advance these three big ideas. And so out of these three big ideas, one of the first decisions that the council made was to articulate this moonshot language here to inform the framework. So this is the moonshot of Kentucky United We Learn. To build a prosperous Kentucky, we will launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to all learners. So you can see the connection here between vibrant learning, or learning that matters to all kids, connected to an assessment and accountability system that is meaningful to all learners. And it's really, and I want to give a nod to Pritchard, folks here, it's really not just about being meaningful, but it's really to advance a more prosperous Kentucky. And so Pritchard has been talking a lot about that for quite some time now, and putting really clear language around that as well. So this is the moonshot. So when we talk about a moonshot, this is the moonshot of Kentucky United We Learn. How do we work toward a more prosperous Kentucky through an accountability system that's meaningful and useful to all learners? This is a really tall order. It's a very ambitious approach here, and you'll hear some local districts who truly are swinging for the fences and thinking big and thinking bold in the spirit of innovation in Kentucky, that has long been the spirit of this Commonwealth. So what's happening now is this framework is beginning to frame up, and the framework really has two parts to it. One part is a federal and state part, which really was in large part about trying to reduce the footprint of required testing to create more room for local assessments, local vibrant learning experiences, and local accountability. So two parts of the whole, these fit together like puzzle pieces, or two parts of a whole. Really, the federal and state requirements are streamlined to fill required buckets from the federal government. The federal parts of accountability still have to be used to identify the CSI, TSI, and ATSI schools. So it's a federal requirement. We have to identify those schools. So those things are still in place. And the spirit of the federal requirements, federal and state requirements, are to provide timely instructional data. And I'll show you what those metrics are in just a second. On the right-hand side, though, there is a real commitment to allowing local flexibility in how local districts want to assess learning, how they customize to local needs of their community, and how to collaborate. One of the big ideas of Kentucky United We Learn was to reduce the competition between schools and districts and try to build up more collaboration so that we can all move forward together as a Commonwealth for a more prosperous Kentucky. And so that doesn't always happen when you're competing against the school and the district down the road. And so how can we learn together? Justin said this quite some time ago, and I've repeated it many times. It's just absolutely true that Kentucky likes to learn together. So how can Kentucky learn together to advance a new system of assessment and accountability that advances these ideas? So here we are. Let's look toward the right-hand side of this yin and yang for a second. Meeting federal requirements, the state accountability indicators will continue to be summated performance on reading and math, as has been the case. There is going to be a shift toward individual student growth. The transition and readiness graduation rate indicator will remain the same. There is still a focus on English language progress, and then the climate and safety survey, which has always been an indicator, or long been an indicator for local accountability. And then the science assessment has to be tested and reported that students took it, but the actual performance on the science assessment can move over to the local side of the equation here. So let's take a look now at the left-hand side of this, which is a local accountability indicators. So here's where this is sort of a lot of the innovation that's happening from local districts and the main meat that we want to get to today, which is there's going to be flexibility in administration and inclusion of local indicators. So interim assessments will be offered by the state. Individual districts can opt into that, or they can provide their own interim assessments, but interim assessments and students' performance on those will be reported as part of local accountability. Locally determined indicators, so whatever else a district wants to identify as locally important, and you're going to hear some really great examples of that in just a few minutes. So I'm not going to dig into that too deeply myself. But then there are some required reporting elements of local systems. So student access and outcomes related to vibrant learning experiences, so that learning that matters. So local districts are going to be required to report out about that, and then required to report out on performance of writing and social studies assessments, and then science off-grade testing. So you can see there is plenty of assessment in here. We're not getting away totally from test scores. What we're trying to do is make more room for the kinds of local innovations that are happening to include, and this is really, really important, and I don't want it to get overlooked. Out of 171 districts in Kentucky, 145 of them now have local portraits of a learner. So those cross-curricular competencies that have been created by districts or identified by districts, lots of local communities are saying we want kids to be effective collaborators, creative thinkers, resilient learners, engaged citizens. So how are you building learning toward that, and how are you assessing that? So some of the things that we're seeing happen on this side of the equation are things like student created portfolios, student defenses of learning, exhibitions of learning, really student-centered, whole child work and projects that mean something to kids, that kind of work that's in the spirit of what Kentuckians said they wanted, and a more whole student-centered approach to assessment and accountability. So tons of assessment going on, but more broad than just the traditional metrics. So, and we'll share these slides with you, but really just trying to move away from standardization, more toward vibrant learning experiences, away from comparison, toward collaboration, as we mentioned before, less on the state control, more about local innovation here, and less oriented toward compliance, which accountability historically has been, and more about how can we support a network of feedback and collaboration between local districts, so we can move forward as a Commonwealth toward a more prosperous version of ourselves. So you can imagine this is going to require a lot of change. It's a change in mental model. It's a change in the experience of students, which requires a change in behaviors on the part of educators and communities who are around this work. So no one expects all of that to happen all at one time. There is an approach here that is kind of a rollout. So how might we start and move folks toward? So first of all, there's a pilot phase, and I would say informally, we may have already started the pilot phase with the local labs of learning districts who are already beginning to build toward this. The local labs of learning have been at work since 2021 and 2, really trying to figure out what does all that really actually mean in practice. But there will be a continued pilot phase of a more formal element of study. And then we're going to expand to more districts. It has already happened. There were 18 initial local labs of learning. It's already happened that more districts want to join in on that, this is what I say when there's a movement afoot. When more people want to join the discussion, you can hear that there is a movement afoot. And then we'll move to a sustainability phase where we really begin to codify and spread and scale those things that have been identified as best practice, and what are the good ideas that should spread across from district to district. I do want to pause there and say, first of all, what questions, but also there are other people who have been part of this work that I'm sure I've probably have missed something in this history of Kentucky United We Learn. So I'd love to just pause and hear any questions or any other additions from other folks, particularly people who have lived in it since the very beginning.
Well,
Okay.
Karen, you know me. I'm never gonna
Yes, right.
I'm never gonna be completely silent.
I love it. Thank you, David Cook. Thank you.
And Travis is going, well, I knew he'd have to talk at some point. And I wrote it just now in the chat. Having been around this work in previous iterations that Travis will probably tell you about, I think the thing from the moment that we started the United We Learn conversation that made this different is a couple of things. The first of which is the bottom up approach to doing this, to taking individual communities and having conversations with them about is that notion of building this local accountability from the outside in, hearing from the community, not just asking them, but actually using the information that they give us. But more importantly, it's the first time that I can remember that we took the approach, which is why I think it has taken hold in times when it didn't before. We've approached this from a standpoint of what really is the problem is that there's an imbalance in accountability. Accountability is basically has been federal and state alone.
Mhm.
And there was zero local accountability that was a part of the conversation. People did local accountability. A lot of folks, previous to Karen's pointing out how many districts now have a portrait of a learner, a lot of people were already doing things around measuring local things, but they had no value.
Yep.
There was no purpose for doing those things beyond it was good to do them and you should be doing them.
Yep.
Now, for the first time that I can remember, our approach has been, let's balance this thing a little bit more. Instead of it being all the way like this, let's get it a little bit back to a more appropriate balance of all the levels of accountability. So we don't take this approach, which, let's change the test and let's not do as so much with content. Still got to have content. And as you said, Karen, that's never going to go away. Even if as Justin said, even if the department goes away, you still have law that says you have to make sure kids know how to read and write and have numeracy skills. But that's not all. And particularly in the world in which we live, the world in which kids are going into, the world of AI, a world that's skills-based. If everybody doesn't recognize that, the world is not content-based, the world is skills-based. Because content's going to change. Oh, it just changed. Hear that? Oh, it just changed again. Oh, it just changed again. A new job was just created. A new field of study was just created as I'm speaking. So what we have to have is kids that know how to learn, and the rest will happen because if they know how to learn, they can learn what they need to learn. That's what we have to have, and that's what local accountability does for every learner in the state of Kentucky and hopefully in this country. So thanks for letting me
And
hop on the soapbox.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I also would acknowledge that part of this movement has been really fueled by a grant that the CGSA grant, the competitive grant for state assessment, that happened under your watch as director of innovation at KDE, and has been a collaboration of lots of organizations across the country that really have surrounded this work in Kentucky to fuel all that. So completely agree with philosophically, and also want to give a shout out to the leadership that you provided to get this work underway, to really bring together lots of folks to have this conversation in Kentucky. I would just want to add to your really, I think, smart observation about accountability. There are lots of districts who are already doing innovative things, but nothing about the assessment system. Not only was it externally applied to folks, but there was nothing about the system that incentivized the kind of learning that some of those districts were doing. The people who have been long at it on, the skills focus, the portrait of a learner work, all of that. So how can we create a system that incentivizes districts into the conversation to advance the kind of learning that we really care about? So I totally agree with your take on that for sure. Last thing, and then I want to stop talking because I want to turn it over to the local districts, but I just want to share this. First of all, this definition, and I want to give credit to Brian Kreisman for lots of these really, I think, inspirational words about what local accountability is. It's really by the people, for the people. It's intended to be transformative. This whole concept of local accountability owned by us rather than, as David was saying, externally imposed on us is a real shift in mental model. So one of the great things that I've seen about this happen is that this can restore trust and build trust between communities and local school districts. Kentuckians have long supported local schools, public schools, but this is a way to continue to co-create and build the path forward. So is really exciting. And this articulation here provided to us from Brian Kreisman, who's also on the call and who thinks about local accountability more than any human I know. So can't wait to hear a little bit about from him. Yeah.
Can I, well,
Yeah.
there's a little clip that KDE's put together that we want to show, and Karen will show that, and that'll help transition us into, first, I think we're going to head to you, Greenup, to give us an example. But this is a forum. The word forum implies some talk and participation, right? And so before we show this, Karen, maybe let's stop the screen and just invite about 5 minutes of just open conversation. You can unmute, turn off video. It's okay. Of course, we love questions, but if you just want to make a comment, like Delaney made a comment in chat, thanks, Delaney. Open to all of that. And you can't tell me there's no questions about the entire accountability system in Kentucky. Like, no, easy peasy.
Can I respond to a question I see in the chat that I think there has been a substantive, a bit of progress on, and I missed all the chat, so I'm just grabbing one. I see a comment there, a question there from Patrick Hall that says, love all the potential here. And I wonder if there have been developments in terms of evaluation component of local accountability. So I think the question is a good one, which is, if you evolve accountability to local communities, what are the assurances of quality around those local systems? And so here's my perspective on that, and then I'd love to hear from other folks as well. First of all, some of this language needs specificity. Like, everybody's not creating their own definition of vibrant learning, for example, or their own definition of some of these things that we're working towards. So there is an approved definition of vibrant learning. There is under construction right now a rubric to define what vibrant learning is, and how do we know it, and not to the point of what are the pieces of evidence that a district might provide, but in any good competency-based system, you define what the criteria are, the success criteria are, and folks can sort of get to that in many different pathways, and they can show that they're doing that in many different ways. So the demonstrations of that vibrant learning, for example, are going to be varied from district to district, but the definition will remain the same. And the way that that's going to be evaluated is First level, a self-assessment by the district. Second level, these networks of support of districts who get together and provide each other feedback. Fleming County, for example, already opened up to a site visit for Vibrant Learning. And so they're a team of people external to Fleming County went there and said, let us see your evidence of Vibrant Learning. So that external team of people. And then there will be another level of an external evaluation of this is sufficient. So lots of actual levels of collaboration and feedback, but there will be a definition that we're sort of all working toward, but the evidence may be different as in a good competence-based system. That's one example of a quality control. Having said that, there's a ton of assessment literacy that needs to be built here around evaluating portfolios and student defenses. And that is a worthy pursuit that is underway across the Commonwealth and lots of places as well. How do you build good assessments around this stuff? How do teachers get good at evaluating these things? So other folks can speak to some of that assessment literacy that's happening for those things, but that's just one example I can think of. And I hope that's an answer to your question, Patrick.
Thanks for catching that, Karen. Patrick, all sound okay? I mean, it's not like there's all the answers laid out for all time, but it is actively trying to figure out how to assure quality. Again, shout out to our evaluation center. They've been here at UK trying to help figure out pieces of that. It's going to take a bunch of different folks figuring that out together. And to the extent we can figure it out as Kentucky ourselves without something coming in above us, that would even be better. But that is a pretty big ask for Kentucky to figure it all out completely on our own and support it on our own. Cross fingers. And we need help.
Justin,
Sure.
really quick, a couple of things to Patrick's question. I'm not so concerned about us being able to get to that set of rubrics and measure and what defining is. I'm concerned about whether the system, and by that I mean all the people in the system, will allow us to get to that place, because it's a very different method or thought process to be looking at multiple ways to get to the same answer, because we don't like that, because we want everything to be standardized. We want all of the ways to get to the answer to be the same. And so we have to be able, as a whole system, to open our minds to that notion that there could be multiple ways to get to an answer. So that is there. And Justin, I just want to let you know from work that I'm now doing that there are several other states deep into this same conversation about what it means to measure the things we're talking about, those skills, those competencies, that learning that's not just about content. So we're not in it alone. And hopefully we're going to learn from each other. Again, back to what Karen said about our CGSA grant, there's 5 other states that now have a CGSA grant that they put their application in based on what we were doing. So we've got friends who are thinking about the same thing in different ways. And we need to always be mindful that there are others that we can learn from about how we get local accountability in the mix. So,
well, thanks for that shout out to other states. I agree completely. And Karen and I mentioned this, and even one point we designed this as a much longer session where we invited some national folks, but like, how much of your time can we take? But that yeah, I think is right, David. Kentucky is in the vanguard of a group of states that are actively trying to figure this out. To the extent we can figure it out together, great. But to the extent we can also develop local solutions based on the entire ideology of local solutions for local problems. And so, it's a very evolving space, but it is a space where Kentucky is pretty far in the front of the pack, at least. And there are a lot of eyes beginning to center on us in Kentucky. So it's good and bad. Yay for being out in front. Not so awesome in my view that like everybody's starting to look at us, because we're still working on a lot of things, as you'll see and as the superintendents will speak to.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I'd really love to turn it back over to you, Justin. I dropped the slides and including that video link in the chat over there. I want to turn it back over to give maximum time that we have to the districts.
Let's do it.
Love to hear some examples.
Yes, indeed. So we want to show examples, right? And so, and as Karen said, there's many districts at this point going down this journey, starting with L3 and then now moving into these local accountability models. Very much one of the leading districts is Fleming County and Bryan. And I want to give a shout out while we're here together, before we jump into Greenup and Allen, to not just the work that Fleming, the district, is really doing to help lead this work, but also the work that Dr. Kriesman, the leader, is doing to help advance this conversation. So there's a link over in the chat right now, and Brian just put a link or a post as well. Brian, you can jump in to the Measures of Quality newsletter, which is, you're prolific about this. He's more prolific than probably anyone in the whole country. And so that's definitely a place to read more that I want to shout out as we dive into the local models. Is that okay, Brian? You're okay with just a good shout out? And Fleming County has a model which you can Google. So if you want to see even another local example of accountability and what that looks like, you can Google that one. So, but today we want to bring you two others just to give you a sense of what's popping across the state. So I want to turn over to Tracy and the team in Greenup that have been working hard to bring together a local accountability model there for them. Greenup County, for those of you across the state might not know, is up along the Ohio River towards our eastern boundary. And so they have a mix of things going on in their district, which they can speak to. But Tracy, under Tracy's leadership as superintendent, the district has really been making a lot of great progress. So we're super impressed with Greenup and wanted to bring you that story today as an example. So over to you, Tracy. Unmute yet.
You'd think after COVID in 2020, I would have learned that lesson by now, but I'm still, you're asking me to multitask with sharing a screen and talking. So good afternoon. I'm Traysea Moresea, superintendent of Greenup County Schools. And I'm definitely not as highly qualified as Brian Kriesman or Travis Hamby to be doing this, but I do want to share what the hard work of our local school district has been doing to make a difference in our community. So it all began, honestly, in 2021, the time frame that Karen mentioned earlier for us. We were searching for ways to help make sure our graduates were leaving with several options for graduation. Our key concern was ACT and how we were preparing for ACT. And sometimes, testing for us had became name and claim or name and shame, as if a student had a certain score on their ACT, they were removed from certain electives and opportunities because they needed to spend more time on that ACT prep. And so we really wanted to shy away from that and change, because we saw in COVID, there were so many other needs that came about from that, as far as socialization, understanding of the world around them. And we wanted to make sure they were walking out with the very best opportunities. And that begins from preschool all the way up for us. So we started working with, I reached out to Lou Young. She, of course, sent me directly to David Cook, who everyone has heard mentioned several times on here. And I was fortunate enough to have Brian Kriesman as my mentor when I first got started in all of this. So I've been very fortunate to have people along the way that's helped us know the direction in our hearts where we felt like we should be headed. So we had over 50 people in the community come together and discuss with us overall what their hopes and dreams were for Greenup County Schools. So the gamut, ranged from our local doctors, local businesses. He owns a shop that does auto body, self-made. We have local community members who are in the post-secondary world. We also had our local union reps involved with this. Our judge exec was involved. And so also our teachers, we had students on this committee. It was really helpful to have the committee put together. And we just said, here's where we've been. And then this is where we really need direction as to where we should go. So we started developing this concept of the profile of a graduate because our school district did not have one at the time. And what do you want your high school students leaving with? Then the next thing, the following year, we started developing the core four. What should be happening at the middle school level and how will we measure that? And then the same thing with elementary profile of a fifth grade student, grades 3 through 5. Now, all of it, one thing we have learned is people do not want to just look at data or read about it. So we have a really remarkable person who helps us put together videos so you can see that. And I see that Justin was nice enough to put everything in the link there so that you can see our dashboard for yourself and explore it. But we have videos of all the activities going on in our schools. We publish them on social media. That gives everyone a chance to see, yes, we're doing the things that you've asked us to do. We reconvene this committee yearly. We were meeting quarterly, and we've been able to reduce that down just because they're kind of getting the hang of how everything works. And instead, we bring them in for more meaningful sessions, such as, would you watch the students' defensive learning and help give feedback, as opposed to sitting in a big room giving us information. So that has changed and evolved. So you can kind of read on this page all the amazing people who were involved in it. But then we finally got to 23, 24. If you look down, there's an old dashboard. This was our first year where that we started reporting out to our community quarterly on the things that they found to be the most important to them. So we have 4 pillars in our strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, we measure each pillar by its own framed dashboard. So we have 4 pillars: gold standard students, gold standard staff, the quality of our staff, the gold standard community, how are we interacting and participating with our community, and then gold standard operations, which is something that all taxpayers want to know. How are we spending the money? What are we doing with the money? Where does it all go? There's also a nice overview at the bottom of this page that kind of just gives you a timeline of how all of this came about that I won't bore you with. But I will tell you the very first slide was key to me. And that is that in 2010, we were a persistently low achieving school district, which means the state was monitoring us and supporting us all about test scores. And our poverty rate was 68.2%. In 2019, we were considered a school of distinction. We had risen to the top. We were in the top of the state as far as performance and growth. But yet our community still sat at 67.4%. And that was very eye-opening to me to see that we had not done anything to help our community get better. And so that is part of my passion, is to make sure our kids know how to give back to the community knows they're welcome to be a part of us, and that is, to me, is true local accountability. Before with all of COVID, they had felt distanced from us, and this was another way to bridge that gap back together and get them back into the school supporting what we do. So our first year, as you'll notice, it was a little more dull, a lot of information. We worked with Brave Ed, which they have been very passionate from Texas, explaining that there's other ways to show accountability. So we worked very closely with them. And they even gave us feedback on our dashboard and explained to me, Tracy, you are measuring so many things. Nobody wants to see that much stuff. So we trimmed it down a little bit and made it a little bit more succinct. So this is this year's final data. And so anyone can get to this. It's public facing. It's on our main website, just on the local menu. If you look on the website, you will be able to go down the side of the menu and you will see it. And you will also see our strategic plan there as well. On this, a couple of things Justin asked me to point out on our dashboard that we think our community would find important, and things that I really bring out to my board. One thing for us to note is that we actually maintained our enrollment this year. It's the first time that our enrollment has stayed steady in 10 years. And I do believe a lot of it is people are seeing that we are giving our very best effort to make sure our kids walk out with multiple opportunities. So I think that is really exciting for us. Student survey results, 91% of our students responded that they feel safe in their schools. And these are grades 3 through 12. And that comes from the state data itself. The state gives that questionnaire. And to me, that was one of the top questions to have a student answer is, do I feel safe when I come to school? And 91% of them said yes. And that's always a big goal. You want that to be higher. And that's something we are constantly working on. If you look at the benchmark growth, we use iReady. It is something that we give 3 times a year, and we are looking at growth. We are not looking at achievement there. We're looking how many percentages, what percent of kids are growing. So if you'll notice, it goes to quarter 3 because quarter 4, as anybody in the educational world knows, is nothing but taking more state tests, end of year performance-based assessments. So we get to show growth, but then we'll get to do it again quarter 1 again next year, and we'll see how those kids continue to grow. So they don't just grow that year. We want them to grow even from quarter 1 to quarter 1 of the next year. We want to see that growth. The previous year, I just wrote down some notes so that you don't have to see me flip back and forth on these, but something to note, our first year of monitoring data, our students, graduated in the class of 2024 with 296 certifications. These are certifications that meant they could go out and become a phlebotomist, CNA, MNA, welding certifications, electricity, all the gamut. This year, our students walked out with 449, ready to go to work. And to me, that shows that we are starting to get our focus in on how many students are getting to have multiple opportunities to be ready to go to work for our community. The other key component is we have the most dual credit offered in our area. We've been blessed with UK to offer dual credit. And then we see this passion of a teacher saying, oh, I do see the benefit of that. I really want to see if I can fit a dual credit class in my schedule because I see kids need this. So we've been able to add some things on. And before, the focus might have been, I really like just teaching the same class all day long and just let me keep teaching the same thing. So they're starting to want to pick up more electives, and it's really driving change within our buildings. Another thing that I will contribute this to is our middle schools have taken on CTE, and they now offer courses that prepare them and let them explore and mirror all the CTE courses that we have at the high school. So now they've already done their exploration. So then when they get to the high school, they start working towards the true certifications that they know in their heart they want to earn. And that has opened up spaces in our certification programs for kids who might just go explore and then drop. Now they're not doing that. They're finishing what they start because they kind of already know what they're getting themselves into. By doing that at the middle school level, we reduced behavior issues and we increased our attendance and positive behaviors in our schools. So that has been key. So as you see, our special education services, we have one of the highest amount of special needs in the area. We are to the point now where we have so many IEPs that it becomes overwhelming. It absolutely does. And so we're having to get creative on how we're going to do that. One thing that I do monitor is to make sure that I don't have too many in RTI versus too many in special education. What we're also finding is they're coming to us with IEPs. We're not identifying them. They're showing up. And that adds a challenge. And I don't know that there's many superintendents you would talk to in Eastern Kentucky that aren't having that same situation happen. Our attendance rate, it's solid, especially after COVID. We're really working to get that higher. But if you look at the graduation stats, 94% of our students fall into some sort of at-risk category, whether it would be a special needs situation or if it is someone who has a large issue with family. They might be living with a grandparent, they might be homeless, they fall into some sort of category. And so out of that 94, our success rate is still 98.6%, meaning 98.686 graduated on time with their certifications. And you have to keep in mind that some IEPs in special education do not allow them to get a traditional graduate rate. And we had 2 students that fell into that category this year. They graduated and they did all the work, but just federal requirements were not allowed to give them a true diploma, which that's a whole nother thing I would love to figure out how we solve that. So we do that with, one of our focuses is making sure they're getting those extracurriculars in place, because we know research shows that the more they're involved, the better they do and the more they feel connected to schools. Then our gold standard staff, we're looking at staff attendance, and I'm kind of excited to tell the staff that the students beat them this year in attendance. So they're going to be hearing about that from me. And then how many staff members we have, the number of training hours they completed. So some of this is great information just for our board, so they understand where we are spending our money on the trainings.
Can you
And
speak
then
to
how
that?
many are leading the actual extracurriculars, because they're not just teaching, they're going after school and they're doing extra to keep kids involved. And I think that's important for people to recognize. And then, of course, class visits within the schools. Then we also have dashboard monitoring for what we're doing in the community. Total for this year, 193 events to get our people into the doors of the schools and be a part of things, whether it be ceremonies, presentations, defenses of learning, etc. You'll see our social media work, and then how many business partners we have. And we're currently managing 22 grants, which I'm beginning to think I need a full-time grant manager, but I'm too cheap to pay for it. We spread it out. And then our alumni, we did not have an alumni at all until we started talking to our community in the L3 work. And so that has been very, a big game changer for us to bring some of our alumni back in and get them involved in what's going on. So they've been a huge part of it. Then, of course, our gold standard expenditures, 281,000 meals have been served to our students. You just don't understand the idea of taking away their basic needs in the summertime is what it feels like you're doing. So we even have it still going on during the summer. We qualified for some grants to keep that going above and beyond what we normally do. Just making sure they have their basic needs met. Transportation, I will tell you, kids of poverty ride the bus. And it's very important that we get those in. So this is a slide I always go to when I'm talking to my local representatives, so they understand our needs for funding and understand how many miles we're putting buses on the road. And I'm very proud of our bus drivers this year. 0 incidents. They helped us tremendously on our insurance costs. So those are all things that community members want to know.
Tracy, could I
yeah.
get you to speak to being cognizant of time, because I want to get Alan in here
Sure.
as well.
Yeah.
This is excellent deep dive into the data. Can you just speak sort of briefly? I heard you say legislator and board member. So who is receiving this kind of picture of data on a yearly basis from Greenup in general?
So we actually have this put on the website, that it is shared out. I put it on all of our links, our social media. And then whenever we have our reconvening of groups, we bring them in and let them see it. It also goes to all of our board members, and then it goes out to every single person in our school. I do something called a Thursday Thoughts. And every Thursday, I send an email to our staff with updates, things that are going on, reminder to update your insurance, or hey, we're double checking doors, make sure you're locking things. This is when testing is going to be, etc. And I always include updates from this too. So we try to make sure that people are seeing this data. It's also shared with principals, fellow admin, and they give me this data and I create it. This is $0. It's made with Google and Canva. So we did not hire a company. We spent no money on this. And these are things that we collect all over the district to start with. But now it's out there for everyone to see some transparency to it.
We have a question from chat from Kyle from the Pritchard Committee, who wanted to know about the community business partnerships. And I think and Brian stresses this as well, about how important that community engagement piece is. The fact that you have a dashboard around that is amazing. But then the question from Kyle was, do you have personnel dedicated to sort of orchestrating that business engagement logistic kind of space?
You know, to be honest, it is flat out encouraged by everybody. It's everyone's job to make sure that they're bringing in people from the community and including them, whether it's the principal, whether it's Frisky, whether it's me. A local board member will say, hey, I know so and so. Do you think they would be good for guest speaking for your school? So our goal is everyone knows that we want to bring people in and let them see what we're doing. And then perhaps they will even find a way that we can give back or they can give back. So some great examples of just community-based work. I'll flip through this really quick for you. Which this is another thing we do just for people who are wondering how we get it out there. We will summarize some of the data and just put like posters out of top numbers so people can see it and get it out there so they can understand what it means. But really quick, if you can see this, okay, here's some examples of some community-based. For instance, our middle schoolers had a foods class. They found out that the local Meals on Wheels had no one donating food or driving food to the community. So they had no one to take the food there because we have a very ailing population that is elderly that needs Meals on Wheels, but we also have either you're working or they don't have a car to help out with it. So our Frisky now picks 4 to 5 kids that are ahead of what they're doing. They've met all of their goals in whatever goal was set for that week. They load up the Frisky vehicle and they take the kids to deliver Meals on Wheels. All right. So that gives the kids a chance to see and give back to the community that gives to them. And the elderly who receive Meals on Wheels are delighted to have a young kid to show up at their door with a lunch or a dinner. They're very excited about that. And a lot of them they've made themselves. Maybe they grew it in hydroponics class. It might be eggs that we have chickens that we create dishes from. So a lot of that is a great example of us getting involved in the community and then finding a need and being able to give back. Because a lot of these kids are of poverty and they've been on the receiving end from the community and now they get to return that favor. We have them show up and sell their wares at different events, whether it's fairs or community gatherings. That's another way to get them involved. And I see Mr. Mosier is on here at one time earlier. He's our art teacher. We had no parents available to help us paint the field. So our 7th period artists went out and made the football field come to life with the logo in the center of it. The math, the measurement, the design that came to that, and then just the sheer relief from the football team. It really combined some people. So that's just a couple of examples of how vibrant learning has taken place. Another great one, we have businesses that now donate so that none of our kids have to pay to get into games. They all come into local games free of charge. And that's because the community gave back and did not want to see those kids miss out on after school events to cheer on each other. So.
Okay, well, lovely. Thank you, Tracy, for giving us that deep dive into Greenup. Link is over there in the chat. All of this stuff is out there public. Everyone, you can go click and learn and dive deep. I mean, that's part of the point here is it's public accountability, right? It is public sharing. And so not only that data dashboards, but also the stories that are coming forward. Now, in that,
and we have a podcast too. So, Justin, I'm going to ask you and Karen sometime to join me. Okay.
Yeah. We can do the podcast for sure. Well, lovely. Okay, we're going to turn then. This is one example. I want you to hold this example because the whole point today is to show multiple examples because it's local accountability. Each local context is going to shape their own storytelling, their own accountability models that they want to employ. So there's one from Greenup. When we finish with Alan, we'll have a few minutes left to sort of unpack them together. But let's turn now to Travis, who again has been on this journey for a very long time and is one of our sort of core deeper learning leaders in Kentucky and in the superintendent's chair in Allen County, has been helping Allen County go down this road. So excited to hear from you, Travis, the work that's taking shape there.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate the opportunity and invitation to be part of the conversation today. So hopefully you see the little slides, I hope. Yes?
Yep, we're
We're
good.
good?
Looking good.
All right, excellent. Let's see if I can. Is it showing as a slide or is it just showing the?
Right now it's still Google. Yeah, there you go. Go to slideshow.
Yeah. All right, we'll try to get there. So, so Justin said this. This is my 16th year as superintendent. I started the work down this pathway, working with David Cook. I think David referenced this back in 2020. So been married for 30 years, and what's really driven me is a lot of what I want, not just for my own personal kids, but what I've been driven to create for all kids in my school district. Our school district is comprised of 5 schools. We have about 3,100 students, 65% free and reduced lunch in Allen County. Tracy mentioned the IEPs. We have about 20% of our students with IEPs. So very cognizant of that in terms of our planning. Median household income about $48,000. Just to kind of tell you a little bit a story, I tend to believe the process is as important as what the final product looks like, in terms of building ownership and the relationship with your community, especially when it comes to what you hope to accomplish in your school district. So for us, I became superintendent here in Allen County in 2019. And in 2020, we actually began a visioning process, and you can see that on the screen, and happy to share some of this with you if you need more, if you want more information. But if you go down to the phase 2 of this, where we're working through this process, we didn't start out to create a accountability system. We sought to create something that would engage our kids and better prepare them for their future. We really started asking the question, what is it that our kids need to be able to do to be successful in today's global economy? And so it was from that became our driving question in 2020. And in the second phase of this, as we were going through the process, developing a vision, mission, core values, our graduate profile, et cetera, that the local laboratories of learning that Karen has explained launched, and we became involved in that work in 2021. There was something else that happened in 2020 as we were going through the visioning process that just really brought a moment of clarity for me personally. And I guess I say this because it kind of repositioned me or clarified thinking about what we had to do as a school district. And in 2020, our seniors that year did not really have the traditional graduation that they were accustomed to. So we actually visited the home of every one of our seniors, as so many districts did, and we asked them a question: what are your plans after graduation? And what we heard was too many students lacked clarity around that. They really did not know what they were going to do, what their next step was, no real sense of direction. I won't say that was 100%, but it was too many. And what became an imperative for us is really these 3 things at the bottom of the screen there. And it's that we wanted every student to know what they wanted to do, and we wanted them to know how to get there, and that we wanted to be sure that as a school district that we had equipped them with the knowledge, skills, and experiences to succeed. And that really goes back to that question that I just mentioned to you that was driving our vision work anyway, is what is it that our kids need to be successful in the global economy that we now find ourselves. Hopefully you see when you look at this vision statement on the screen that I'm not going to read to you, but hopefully it resonates back to those imperatives that I just shared with you. And what we learned through 2020 is we really want our kids to know their strengths. We want them to find something that allows them to come back and be productive citizens within our economy, and that they have our school community, and that they have a meaningful purpose in life. Our mission of our district is to help them be successful contributors in an ever-changing society. I tell you all that because we started visioning work before the L3 work started, and so you have to understand how these 2 things end up meshing together and connecting with one another to really create where we are at now. So we developed our profile, which is the competencies, the things that we wanted for our students. This was a community developed profile. You can see the 5 components there. If you look across Kentucky, there's so many of them that would align almost perfectly to these that we have identified here in Allen County. And as we moved into the L3 work, what you'll see in a few moments is that's really become central to what our community, they said, we want our kids to have these skills, right? To possess these skills. And we really try to design a local accountability model that honors and tells our community how our students are doing against these outcomes that we have identified collaboratively with them. We realized that if our skills were going to be competent in these particular skills, that we were going to have to change or adjust or modify, if you will, our instructional model. So in other words, we wanted to make sure that our kids were having the learning experiences that would allow them to be able to develop those skills, if you will, to flex those muscles, to demonstrate their growth in those competencies over time. We were really going to have to think about what that teaching and learning looked like in Allen County schools. So we landed on these 5 to be central to what we were trying to build. If you go back to the screen where it shows you our timeline, we implemented a strategic plan, which we actually call a strategic roadmap, because a strategic plan has these things that happen every year around particular goals, and we're not quite in sync that way, but we're using that to just kind of guide our path forward. So our L3, as I mentioned, it started in 2021 as part of the Kentucky United We Learn initiative. And I think Karen mentioned this, but you can see here just on the map, the districts that were involved in the cohorts of the L3 work across the state. We were one of the founding members of the L3 work, and just trying to spotlight that. So it's kind of sprinkled all across the state of Kentucky. Karen mentioned, and I think David even mentioned, that idea of how we've kind of created this CIA-like secrecy when you look at test scores driving us forward. I love this book and how it talks about the race to create the first digitally animated film. And you probably remember this. It was Toy Story. And I just bolded, kind of bold type there in the bullets. The company that created this, Pixar, decided they were going to publish everything they were learning and take active roles in conferences and really sharing, really being transparent. And as they did that, if you look at the last bullet, the relationships and connections we formed over time proved far more value than we could ever imagine, fueling our technical innovation and our understanding of creativity in general. That's what I love about the L3. I mean, I've been able to take our model and share that with people like Brian and Tracy and get feedback and them tell me what works and what doesn't work, and kind of to try to push my thinking on this. CIE has been a really critical partner for us, as well as the UK Next Gen. And I share this water of systems change just to say, when you're looking at really transformational change, you can't just work on structures, but you also have to work on behaviors. And that's with relationships, power dynamics, and mental models. And that's where CIE came in and said, we want to help you change those behaviors. And here are 4 habits of co-creation that we believe will help change behaviors in your school district. So we have really embraced those 4 habits. I would tell you, this is what's really different from the work that I did in my previous district that really has created ownership. I often say my goal is to make new mistakes as we move this work forward, just meaning I don't want to make the mistakes I've made in the past. So to learn from those things and try to do things better. And I would tell you, this is what's helped me do this work and create a local system that I think our community truly does value by going through this process of inclusion, empathy, co-creation, and reciprocity. The next thing that we did as part of that process that connects back is the empathy component. And we, our 29 members on our L3, which was, I mean, it was totally inclusive, parents, community members, teachers, administrators, students, everybody was involved. They all went out and did empathy interviews within our community. Those empathy interviews were processed by our group, and we devised a problem statement that would drive our local accountability work forward that, again, was right in the middle of our visioning work. I just want to be sure you keep that in mind about the context of everything that we were doing. And it was that we would create a system that really prepares our students to address the economic, social, and workforce challenges of our community. And so when we connect that back to the moonshot of our state, I would tell you, I think there's a really big connection. This is not something that happens overnight, but we knew if this was going to be the case, that we had to look at more than the narrow set of skills that were currently being measured by our state assessment and accountability system. So 3 questions drove our work. How do we empower our students? How do we assess? And how do we communicate that growth over time? That moved our particular L3 group to create a model that was really anchored in defenses of learning. We created a storyboard. As you look at this, I would tell you this is what they came up with. This is not, I didn't sit in a room and say, let's do these 8 things and really focus on them. They created it. They named it. Really, I would tell you, this is not just a defensive learning system. This really is a performance-based assessment system that kids are having to not just paper and pencil showcase what they know, but they're having to prove it. They're having to show it. They're having to demonstrate it to show how that their learning translates into something they can actually do with their learning beyond just that sit and get kind of thinking or work. And this is froze up on me, I think. So moving forward, realizing that it's not just about the defensive learning, it really is about developing performance assessments. We worked with Envision Learning Partners to really build not just end of the year, but really performance assessment that measures all the way back to those profile competencies so that we can report out how we're doing against those particular outcomes. And that has moved us now to creating that dashboard. We worked with Deal Consulting and UK Next Gen. And what you'll see, this is the framework that we created for our accountability metrics, really 3 distinct columns over 4 domains. The first one is the profile of a patriot. I told you that was central to our accountability, our local accountability system. We've developed strategies and experiences we want for our students, processes, and performance measures. So when you look at our dashboards, you're going to see both process and performance metrics. And what we're still trying to do is make sure that we tell stories, have video stories of the strategies and experiences from our kids and our teachers that are telling the stories about what our kids are doing. The next domain was the foundational elements. That's specifically in reading and math, and looking at the interventions that we're doing for kids to help them achieve in those particular areas. Student well-being is the next domain. Still, you see those 3 columns being broken out there. And finally, that college and career component for us, looking at really the internships, work-based learning, post-secondary plans that we wanted for each one of our students. And that's all connected back. If I were to go back to that storyboard and look at that, you would see all of those components showing up right here in our metrics. So let's take a quick look, if we can, just at our dashboard that will launch hopefully in the fall, about the same time that the state releases their model. And you'll see just on our landing page here is really telling the story, much of what I just told you, really describing the L3 work, why we're doing it, the guiding questions that we developed, kind of those components of our model, the framework that we created, and the 4 domains specifically. Each one of the domains then has its own component. On the top, you'll see where we dive into the profile, and then you see our process measures and our performance measures. When you look at the process measures, we have really focused on PBL being a core component. You're going to be able to look at this by school year and by school name and drill down into the different things that have been happening around project-based learning. And then this particular dashboard shows you how our students are performing against those outcomes where we are measuring those. Now, eventually, we are working with a third-party vendor that is helping us create real-time dashboards so that as we have these experiences, these are actually created in Google Studio, and we're manually importing that data into Google Studio and creating the dashboards. But eventually, these will be live and real time as we're collecting data through that system. The foundational elements, you'll see where we're really focused on reading and math. If we'll click there, kind of describing it, and then also showing again how our kids are doing. Same kind of dashboard that you've seen on the other two: school year, school name, those students participating in intervention, and then how we're doing in terms of reading and math proficiency. Again, this is not the state results. This is our internal results, how we're measuring those. And then you see the same thing for well-being and college and career readiness. So that's a high-level overview for us around our dashboard and what we're trying to accomplish here in Allen County. All rooted in those we've come to this through those 4 habits of co-creation, where we really worked closely with our stakeholder group and our community. Our work in Allen County Schools reflects a broader commitment to one that would design systems that our community believes and that our students would benefit from. So thank you for the opportunity to quickly give you that overview.
Well, lovely. Thank you, Travis, for sharing and for the leadership over decades at this point. So, you've definitely been advancing the work in Kentucky. And I think to David's point earlier, those eyes that turn to Kentucky like that, this is why the eyes turn to us. There's work over long time to get to the kind of point where we're getting to. As you can see from both of the dashboards, it's still work in development. And so I want to we have 10 minutes and I just want to open it up, unmute, turn your camera on, and just feel free to jump in and ask either Tracy or Travis questions about how this is working at the local level.
Justin, somebody just asked about my dashboard. It is actually not published yet. So it's been a work in process. And because of the process that we followed, that's why it's not came to fruition as quickly as I'd want to. And the third-party vendor that we were working with, we thought would be have our dashboards ready more quickly. They have not, and that's why to get it launched, we went to Google Studio and have created those dashboards.
So I will say, Mary and Travis and Tracy maybe speak to it. I mean, this, and Brian as well, you can speak to it. This represents a lot of time and effort on the part of folks to try to build sites, build data dashboards, collect data. There's a lot of time and effort involved in that. One of the questions that we're wrestling with is like, who can help more and more districts, right? For you, Mary, in the Quebec region, right? How can we help a district that, let's take a Jackson Independent or somebody who, like, asking them to do all of this on their own is a pretty big lift. And so where can we network and work together? And partly, what role can co-ops play in helping to provide platforms in this space?
Justin, can I just mention something that I love? Brian said continuous improvement, always be ongoing change. As we look at the state model too, which wasn't in place when most of us that are on the call started our local accountability models. And now we see writing and social studies kind of coming into play for our local accountability systems. I think that is really important just to bring forward that's going to be another component for us that we will come back to the drawing board and look at more closely. How do we measure those and report those out? And for us in Allen County, that's going to be around performance assessment, where we really are creating those to measure not just the content, but also those other competencies that we have deemed so critically important so that we can report that data back out as well, because we truly believe that all of those standards that we are responsible for, they are critically important to reflect those to our community as well.
Very lovely. Other thoughts, questions? Open it up. Jump in. It's too late on a Thursday afternoon. You're not capable. I've been doing this for a long time, so my instructional wait time is decent. Not the best, but decent. So it's fine.
Justin,
So jump in, Brian.
I will say this, this work, sort of like what Travis and also Tracy, just the collaboration that's happening across districts right now. And this isn't, I'm not saying anything bad. There's just a need for a lot of capacity with this work. And, when districts are collaborating like we're doing right now, we can form that capacity much quicker. So it's not about that competition. It's more about the collaborative capacity. But also, working with Next Gen and also now with the UK Center for Evaluation. And also, I know Delaney was on here from the Pritchard Committee. We need those. We need you all also to help us. And we can't say enough about just how much UK Center, Next Gen and UK Center for Evaluation has really been integral into this work. And I know Tracy and Travis will say the same thing. I mean, we need you all in this to help us.
And if I can jump in real quick, I will say Brian has been nice to share some of his mosaic work, which is fantastic if you haven't gotten to look at that. And our people are very intrigued. We are getting ready to take on the Marzano, the high quality reliability schools. And that is an amazing way to have schools collaborate as far as looking at the rubrics that go along with that and seeing which standards that you need to improve on. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but our co-op at NKCES actually sent several of us to go learn more about it. It was very powerful. So I appreciate our co-op for doing that. But I really found the use of proficiency scales being explained much better when I was attending those sessions and learning that. And it's something that we're ready to go into the mosaic that Brian has created, where that you can create a proficiency scale and your highest of importance standard list that you need to teach in social studies per se, and then develop a project-based approach to teaching that social studies and, lessons and before and after probes to learn more about it and measure learning. So there's so much going on with that I would encourage anybody to hit up Brian for that information as to what he's developed. There you go, Brian. Sorry. But it's great. And he's also doing some of the Marzano work as well. So fantastic work that's really helping us decide where we're going next. And to Travis's point, social studies and science had not been included in our benchmark data on our first one. And we will be looking at that and getting that included.
Well, lovely. We're getting to the end here. And so thank you all for joining. I want to acknowledge just a couple of people, though. Lou has joined the meeting. Lou Young, yay, hi. So early in the presentation, this is Kentucky's moonshot. Well, probably nobody owns that word moonshot in this equation more than Lou, who is really, as in her role as first board chair and now vice chair of the state board, really tried to push this work forward. So Lou, just want to first acknowledge that and then open it up if you want to provide a closing thought at all.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I couldn't be here at the beginning, but I've loved tuning in, and I love these faces. Look at Kim Sargent in here and people from all over Kentucky and blasts from my past. And thank you so much for joining us today. I also just want to thank Dr. McCarthy. She is our hero, and we appreciate her support for this kind of learning across Kentucky. On behalf of the State Board of Education, I just owe big props to Superintendent Creasman, Superintendent Moresea, and Superintendent Hamby for the courage that they have shown in walking out in their spacesuits. Dr. Creasman may have said it earlier when I missed him, but he says, we may not have landed on the moon yet, but we're certainly orbiting it. So their fearlessness and willingness to move out ahead in this kind of work is paving the way for the rest of us. So lots and lots of space analogies to be made there about the new frontier, but we sincerely appreciate their efforts and just love positioning Kentucky to be ahead in this work. So thank you so much, Justin, for a couple minutes.
Yeah, no worries. Lou was late. Haley, if you're listening to us, Haley McCoy is with the Pritchard Committee. Kyle is on the Pritchard Committee here too. They're trying to do some high school redesign stuff. So Lou was late because the state effort around high school redesign is just getting up and going off the ground.
We talked about Pritchard.
Here's Martha's in the room. Martha's helping to provide a little bit of a platform so we can have another one of these coming up about high school redesign perhaps into the future. And the work that you all are doing at Pritchard to help make that happen, right? So maybe that's a good precursor for like maybe where where we go next with these kinds of conversations. Martha, any thoughts from you? I mean, obviously, you've not been in Kentucky, but Martha has been doing this work in Kentucky all the way back to Kara, which she probably doesn't want me admitting in public. I'm sorry, but that was.
No, I said in the chat, this is just terrific, and I have really learned a lot. I'm excited that nationally so many are focusing on Kentucky. I just think that is really exciting and full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead. So thank you so much, Martha, for helping to make it possible. Thank you, Travis and Tracy, for putting yourselves out there, showing the work that's happening, and just sort of being real about this is a journey that's in development. So thank you all for sharing all that. We're going to record. A few folks have asked us to share the recording, so I'll do some of that. And then if you guys have questions, feel free. As Brian said, this is a real collaboration and everybody's trying to help each other. So if you have thoughts and questions and want to know more, everybody's probably easy to access and will happily answer your questions. Thank you all for joining on behalf of the University of Kentucky and Educational Leadership Studies. Appreciate you joining today for our McCarthy Forum on Leadership, Law, and Policy. See you next time.